Hey, everybody, it's Jason McLaren with the Leadership Loading Podcast. And today we're talking about leadership and creating your startup with our guest, Chris Joyce. Chris is the founder of 24 companies, mostly in high tech, consumer goods, health, and manufacturing. And he's sold more than 11,000, sold more products in more than 11,000 stores in 23 countries. And we're going to talk about some of that today and his newest venture, Gusher, as we go forward today. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, definitely. So, 24 companies, 11,000 stores. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, sure. I mean, basically, I've always started companies from the time I was young. I've done a lot of different industries, everything from consumer goods to manufacturing, B2B, B2C, B2B2C, and everything in between. And so it's just what I do. I start companies. I like starting companies.
All right. And so Gusher, obviously your newest venture. And
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, Gusher is a platform to launch companies without the need for money, without the need for investors. People join your company in exchange for performance-based equity. And what I typically say to founders is, what would you do if you had $1 million or $2 million in the bank account right this second? I don't care if you're flat broke. Let's say you had $1 million or $2 million in the bank account right this second. Whatever you could build, whatever you could do, you can Gusher. And I mean anything. We've had everything from, as I was just going into, consumer goods, manufacturing companies, SaaS, fintech, AR, VR, AI, gaming, medical devices, prop tech, fintech, you name it, we've got it. And more importantly, our success rate is extremely high. We've got greater than an 80% success rate. So if you have an idea for a company, but you don't necessarily have the methodology. You don't have a rich family or friends. You're stuck in the middle of nowhere. You don't live in Silicon Valley, New York, or Israel, which accounts for 95% of venture capital dollars. Well, you're SOL, I mean, typically. So Gusher is a way to get it done. I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, but it's a way to get your company launched and operating.
Definitely. I think we see a lot of entrepreneurs go into like these pitch deck meetings or into these angel investment meetings and, or pitch competitions. I'm
Sure.
trying to get the name out there, and try to get those dollars up front. So I think one of the questions I had in my head when I was reading the Gusher website and looking around is, say I want to start a brick and mortar.
Right.
What's kind of the first step if I go to Gusher and then, what do I do next?
Sure. Well, brick and mortar companies, you would think would maybe harder. They're actually easier, and they're actually more rapid in terms of the way they grow. The first step is just joining Gusher and putting up the company, the idea, etc., on Gusher. It doesn't cost anything. I mean, literally nothing. We're a performance-based equity player, so we don't get anything unless the company succeeds, which is the way it should be. So the first step is really attracting a team. So typically when you're starting a company, the vast majority of resources are used for people. So really it's isolating and figuring out who makes the most sense for your company. So if you tell me that, let's say it's a hamburger company, all right, you've got this great concept for a new idea. It's going to need a first location, everything else. Well, the first thing that you start doing is figuring out the recipes, figuring out the menu. Do you need a food chemist? Do you need the branding expert? Do you need a CMO to identify the low-hanging fruit and figure out the competition? My apologies for my voice this morning, but I had smoke inhalation from a house fire, which wiped me out, all right? As you put your team together, typically it adds up between 5 to 10 people that you need at your core to help you create not a minimum viable product, an MVP, but a market viable product. So using the expertise of others helps you leapfrog generational development. Now you may say, Chris, that sounds all nice and dandy, but I've got a physical location. How do I get that money for that first physical location? There's something called rent, Chris. There's something called the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. There's something called having to pay rent. Well, what we show you is fundamentally that, yes, that's true, but there's ways to bring landholders, real estate developers, those other people are what are called your vested interest market, your VIM, bringing them into your deal and actually making them performance-based equity also. And so you end up retaining the vast majority of company, but we've done so many real estate oriented deals doing the exact same thing. It's a right type of owner. It's a certain type that does it. And you're able to get off the ground with literally no dollars whatsoever, none.
Definitely. And I think that obviously solves some problems there. A lot of my ideas on the for-profit side are like, oh, I could do this with this vacant building that's in our neighborhood. I could make this a co-working space, or I could make it an indoor playground. All these things that go through my head. And I know you've talked about when you're thinking about something all the time, that means you have an idea. You got that minimum viable product or minimum value product, and I think so. With all that, the people that are in Gusher, are they looking for someone that, hey, has been to a business school or like our burger concept,
Yeah, sure.
If I'm looking to join a company, I don't want to join with a guy that never done burgers before.
Well, not necessarily. So think of it this way. And this is what we show founders. And the success rates on Gusher have nothing to do with your age. They have nothing to do with your income. They have nothing to do with your location. They have nothing to do with your gender. They have literally nothing to do with your educational background. I mean, it's really crazy. So we have founders, I can think of one right off the top of my head, that's an 80-year-old grandma in South Africa that just got to deal with QVC. We have founders that are absolutely, PhDs from top colleges that have also gushered. But we also have just lone wolves. Here goes my voice again. Lone wolves that basically aren't tied to anybody. They're able to attract a team. So let me explain what the most important part is, okay? The most important part is not your pitch, this glorious pitch. The most important part of really being able to create a team and get a company off the ground is being authentic about where you are, the problem that you've identified, and why you're doing it. Now, before we were on this podcast, a minute before, I asked you why you did what you did. The reason I say that and I ask that is because that is the blueprint. That is the Rosetta Stone for building relationships on Gusher. It's people join people they like. It's not necessarily that you have this big past and this extreme detailed resume in that burger industry. Typically, people do stuff completely removed from what their history and their resume shows. They're doing something different, something that's a pain point that they're experiencing or some opportunity they just see. And we have a saying on Gusher that 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 equals done, meaning that the ability to recruit one person into your team, just one person for performance-based equity, those are the companies that end up developing the product, launching into the marketplace and being successful. So it's really just talking to people, not faking it till you make it, being authentic, and you attract then the right people that you're supposed to have for your team, for your company.
That's awesome. I think that's directly in line with what Go Heroes does, our production company for this podcast. We're trying to help first responders and veterans that want to build their company. And so that's what we've been doing over the past couple of years is, giving them the basic leadership or basic business tips and basic business advice on what do they need to do to go to the next step. Do they need an LLC or do they need an S Corp or what do they need to do? But I think partnering with Gusher or pointing them in the direction of Gusher is going to help them excel more and move forward. So that we're not having to leverage money so much that's usually the first question we get from someone is, where am I going to find some money?
Yeah, but here's the funny thing, okay? And this is really, really true, okay? It's one of our tenets of really operating Gusher. Good deal first, money second. So I'll say it again. Good deal first, money second. Good deal first, money second. It's like our religion. So what ends up happening is it's very difficult. People think that the fairy tale of Silicon Valley is you've got an idea, you create a pitch deck, you're working from your garage, you got these investors, and you're off to the races. Yes, that's happened basically twice in the history of Silicon Valley. However, the vast majority of companies are done the following way. They go ahead, they create an idea. Nobody listens to them. They keep going. They figure a way to bootstrap it or do whatever else. There goes my voice again. And then they're able to go ahead and start getting momentum. Then they start getting more and more momentum. And then suddenly everybody and their uncle wants to join their company. With Gusher, it's really a freaking great way of doing it. You get a team. You've got a top-notch team that is vested in your idea. They get your idea. They want to be involved in your idea. They start working on your idea. They start creating a great product. And then lo and behold, those are the companies that take off. And the vast majority of the time, you don't need anything. No investment whatsoever.
I like it. We'll put a link to the website below in the show notes. And so we always ask our guests, what's your one leadership tip if you had to tell somebody their leadership tip for their business or moving forward in their career?
Sure. Well, I would really say that when it comes to leadership, you never ask from your people what you're not willing to do yourself. So, if you're going to set a very high standard, which I really suggest you do as a founder of a company, you set that high standard, you keep that high standard, you damn well better go ahead and lead by example. And you definitely don't ask your people to go ahead and do anything that you wouldn't do. As a matter of fact, you go above and beyond, and then they're expected to go above and beyond. And that happens every time in my life. I put it out there first, and then they go ahead and end up following and doing similar in their vertical.
Definitely. All right, Chris, I think we connected on LinkedIn, but how can other people find you?
You can find me at Gusher.co, Gusher.co, or you can find me pretty much anywhere. I mean, I'm easily found. I'm pretty much everywhere on every system. So Chris Joyce, easy.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership Inspired.